Raise high the black flags, children. No pity. No prisoners. I'll shoot any man I see with pity in him.
Thank you for joining us today, folks. Today we're going to be discussing Otto von Bismarck and his rise to power to Minister President of Prussia and head of the German Confederation. Yesterday we covered Emperor Napoleon III, and today we will cover Otto von Bismarck. Otto von Bismarck was born April 1st, 1815, during the middle of the famous Waterloo campaign, better known as the 100 Days. 2 months later, Prussian soldiers under Gerhard von Blücher linked with English forces at Waterloo, defeating Napoleon Bonaparte for the final time. Bismarck would then grow up with a strong mistrust of France through his parents, clearly both who were nobles during the Napoleonic era. Growing up in Schaffhausen to his noble family, he only actually had to do 1 year of military service, being he was a noble. So once he did his 1 year in the Landwehr, he returned to Schaffhausen to take control of his family estate. He was a conservative royalist with unfeathering support for the Prussian monarch. But when the revolutions of 1848 erupted, he was introduced to German nationalists as well as unification, but only with Prussia as the leading state. Quickly he joined the government of King Friedrich William as the king's representative to the German Confederation's assembly. This is what's called the Diet. It was held in Frankfurt in the German states in 1851. However, while serving in the Diet, he began to push for Prussia to be the leading state instead of Austria. The king became aggravated because the king did not want Prussia to become the supreme state. He kind of just wanted to deal with Prussia. This was a feeling of many of his predecessors, and even to a point his successors. So the best thing was to send Bismarck to the court of the Tsar in St. Petersburg, beginning in 1857. Following his time away, though, the king had actually died, naming his brother, Wilhelm I, as the new king of Prussia. Though he was as well reluctant with Bismarck, he recognized Bismarck's mastery of politics, as well as Bismarck's own political ideology known as Realpolitik. So he recalled him from Russia to serve as his minister president. Now, for people that don't understand what the minister president is, it's sort of like you're actually running the government. So whereas the United States, we have a president who's the head of state and the head of government, the minister president is the head of government, whereas the king is head of state. This made him the second most powerful man in Prussia. On September 30th, 1862, he gave his most famous speech to the Prussian Chamber of Deputies, which is the Prussian version of their Congress. The end of the speech went as this: "The great questions of the day will not be settled by means of speeches and majority decisions, but by iron and blood." This would set forward his policy for the next somewhat 30 years. While serving as minister president, he quickly made allyship with high-ranking military leaders. This is very important, especially in a state like Prussia, where the military is so powerful. A famous quote from a French philosopher was, "For most states, they have an army. For the Prussian state, their army has a state." So he made friends with Field Marshal von Roon, and most famously, Lieutenant General Helmuth von Moltke. While Bismarck held the reins of political power, Moltke actually reformed the military, investing in breech-loading rifles, the Dresdner needle gun, rail mobilizations, which made the Prussian army 10 times more efficient than any other army in Europe, and focus in artillery, the very thing that had defeated them constantly during the Napoleonic era. The test for the duo came in 1864, when Denmark occupied the duchies of Schleswig and Holstein. These were two regions in the Danish territories that were very ethnic German. So the mentality was, these are our people, so we're gonna go. Why aren't we defending them? Bismarck made this the first of 3 steps he had towards German unification, with Prussia as the dominant state. He convinced the Prussian king Wilhelm I to make a coalition with the Austrian Emperor Franz Joseph I and invade the occupied Schleswig-Holstein regions. Then the Austro-Prussian army invaded. The end of the conflict resulted in Prussia occupying the Duchy of Schleswig and Austria occupying the Duchy of Holstein. Now Bismarck initiated Part 2 to knock out Austria as the leading German state. So he began with a political campaign against Austria, stating that they were misadministrating the Holstein Duchy, they were abusing the population, they were pretty much making all the excuses they could to paint Austria as villains. And this was very easy to do because Holstein was actually now surrounded by 2 Prussian territories. On March 28th, 1866, Prussia began a partial mobilization, trying to make it as if they were going to come to protect the people of Holstein. Austria planned to denounce Prussia to the German Diet, and many of the southern states would also have partial mobilizations and agree with Austria on denouncing the Prussian state. However, Prussia now being one of the larger states with allies in the Diet, Bismarck declared the Diet and German Confederation over. After Prussian forces invaded Hanover, Saxony, and Hesse, the Prussian government declared war on Austria on June 20th, 1866. Though facing the large Austrian Empire and their German state allies, the Prussian army had soundly defeated the Austrians at the Battle of Königgrätz on July 3rd, leaving the road to Vienna open. However, Bismarck demanded Prussia leave Austria alone and not march on the capital. The King of Prussia, Wilhelm, wanted to pretty much do as Napoleon did. He wanted to march into Vienna, and he actually wanted to raze Vienna to the ground. But Bismarck counseled against it, stating in the future they would possibly need another German ally on the world stage. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge to the future. After a very long debate, including Bismarck threatening to actually kill himself, the king agreed with Bismarck, with the crown prince fostering the agreement. So instead of marching on Vienna, the Prussian army retreated, well, retreat's not probably a good word, withdrew back to Prussia, and Bismarck, as well as representatives, all the governments involved, met in Prague to sort out the Treaty of Prague of 1866. The foundations of this treaty first started with the exclusion of Austria from all future German affairs. The next point, the foundation of a Northern German Confederation. Now, this goes into what I was explaining in the introduction video, where you had a lot of the Protestant German states would side with Prussia, and the Catholic German states would side with Austria. So what happened was the Northern German states were prominently Protestant. They joined the Northern German Confederation. But the third point of the treaty was a defensive pact with the southern states. These states were Baden, Bavaria, Württemberg, and Hesse. This defensive pact stated that only in the event Prussia was attacked will the southern kingdoms fight with and help defend Prussia. From 1866 to 1870, Bismarck would plan his last and final move, his third strike, war with the French Empire, the hereditary foe of Prussia in his eyes. Starting with the Prince Leopold incident with the Spanish monarch, Bismarck triggered the famous meeting at Bad Spa between Wilhelm I and Vincent Benedetti. Soon Bismarck would receive the telegraph from the king that we discussed yesterday, and with slight edits, Bismarck sent one copy to the Prussian and German press, framing Vincent Benedetti as a pompous and rude French diplomat talking down to the noble King of Prussia. In France, in short terms, it made it as if Wilhelm had wiped his mouth with the French tricolor and then stomped on it. Now all Bismarck had to do was wait. After mounting pressure from the French people, Napoleon III declared war on Prussia July 19, 1870. Immediately, the southern German states sided with Prussia. Napoleon III would also invade Saarbrücken in Prussia on the 2nd of August with 30,000 men, defeating the small 1,400 Prussian garrison. The reality of the situation was that 938,424 Prussians and Allied troops were marching towards the French border to expel Napoleon III from Prussia, as well as from his own country. And at the head of these columns was none other than Otto von Bismarck. Thank you all for watching today. I hope you learned something new. Tomorrow our next video will be up, the first few months of the war. If you like, please share, like and share. That's all I could ask for. And I'll see you real soon. Thanks everybody, and see you real soon.